I love that we started with you saying, hey, is it gonna bug you if you see me with hair? I mean, it was pretty. John, you missed it. Like Steven was telling me about how he's like basically Kellogg's cutting his own hair, and he doesn't care if it's in a straight line or not. And so he's like, "Can you tell?" And I'm like, "Even if I could, I'm not gonna say that to you." And then he's like, "So how do my locks look?" And I just whatever, jerk face.
Oh,
I'm keeping all this in as well. Welcome to another edition of the Agile Uprising podcast. I have successfully played my favorite game of tricking everybody into starting the podcast with a stupid story. I am the resident court jester, Chris Murman, and I am joined by two of our all-star Discord members. As far as I'm concerned, if there's other people cooler, they may be as cool, but you know, it depends on how much of a troll John's feeling like being that day. John Schneider, how are you?
doing all right, man. Rocking and rolling, loving the Discord, ready to go.
Yeah. How argumentative are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling pretty spicy. I think this is gonna be
yes.
Yes. I did some pre-reading and I'm like, this is gonna be argumentative.
Oh, see, I did about this much. I did about this much research, so this will be good.
By the way, that research was while we were on the Zoom chat.
Yeah.
Before we started the podcast. So
no, I was throwing takes. My wife and I were transitioning from getting other people to bed to like, what are we gonna do the rest of the night? And so she was changing into some comfy clothes, and I just started like lobbing takes at her, like, I'm gonna say this, and she's like, great, I don't care, like whatever you want. Stephen Kellogg, how are you?
Doing fantastic.
Yeah, for since this is not a video podcast, he looks exactly like, his hair looks exactly like Andrew left, and I consider that a personal affront that they're rubbing it in my face. So what are we talking about tonight? This started by a particular day on Discord. Usually there's some banter between Schneider and myself because we like trolling the other one, and it's kind of funny. He makes scaling jokes and jokes about frameworks, and he knows it's going to trigger me, and I have to like watch because sometimes he does it in other channels, and so like just to keep me on my toes. So John makes a comment about servant leadership. I don't remember what the specific comment about it is. He just said, "Hey, I'm doing this with servant leadership," or something like that, and I responded with, "Servant leadership is not a thing," and that caused a bit of a stir. I don't know what John is saying. Like, he's holding a piece of paper up. What am I supposed to be seeing?
You're good.
Okay. Anyways. And then Steven jumped in and I said, "You're going to moderate a conversation." And then I came to find out that he's a traitor and thinks the same as John. So we're going to have a little chat about servant leadership. It's something that we've been talking about. It's in half the classes that you've either been in or trained. It's in every single deck. It's in all of the, yes, I did remember that you did that, John. I also love putting jokes that nobody's going to know the other reference to that's said in chat. So we've talked about servant leadership a lot, right? But like, have we even seen it before? Have we even heard it before? So let me start with this. John, since you started this nonsense, why is servant leadership, or what does servant leadership mean to you?
So what I will say what servant leadership is what I'm going to say is more of a textbook way of what people perceive it as. We're talking like Greenleaf's view of it, mm-hmm. Right? Where it was supposed to be something where the leader themselves kind of make sure that they hold themselves accountable to put others first, their stakeholders, followers, and it's their responsibility to be a leader to them and to quote unquote serve the people of what that is. does that happen as somebody's leadership style?
Well, don't get into that. No. We're not getting into that yet. I just want to know what it means to you.
So,
let's.
Now that's like more the textbook way of viewing what it says. Like if you Google it or if you look online, what I view it as though is not really that. I think it is that, but it's something that you kind of do when it's needed. It's not really a style that you just do all the time. I don't really believe that's a thing. I don't think people are just servant leaders, tried and true all the time, and that's just who they are. But that's just I'll pause there. I'm curious what Steven's going to say.
You know what I just heard him say, Steven? I heard him say it's not a thing, which we can get into that in a minute. The other thing is he goes, I'd like to think of servant leadership by a different definition. It's like, man, I love eating pho. It's great, but the noodles, instead of putting them in broth with vegetables, I just put them on a plate and then put spaghetti sauce,
red sauce on it.
Yeah, put red sauce on it and then some cheese, but that's pho, and I want to
still call it
pho.
that.
Yep, we're gonna call it pho. And man, I'm already triggering John, and I love this. Stephen Kellogg, what does servant leadership mean to you?
To me, it is the core of really focusing on the people and being there for the people, trying to promote them and build them up, and being there in some ways, like from the agile perspective of looking at removing obstacles and that kind of thing as well. That would be a subset of it, I would say. But it's really focusing on the people, giving them voice, helping them to grow.
Yeah, I think it's the most accurate if you take the word servant and leader, right? I mean, that seems like the most, person to person, like down to earth description of it, right? I am a leader who serves first, right? That leads with service, right?
Yeah. I think one of the challenges that it does have is the name, right? Servant leader. So people automatically jump to, oh, great. So I have to get everybody coffee all the time. And that's really not the focus of what it is. That being said, at times that may be the best thing to do. So it's being willing to do and doing what's needed to support the individual and the team.
Yeah, so we Greenleaf's name brought up, we came up earlier. So I will say that servant leadership as a concept was created by a man named Robert Greenleaf, and there's kind of I don't know if it's a nonprofit or if it's just a loose group of people that kind of focus on servant leadership, right?
It was like the 70s, right? Something like that.
So I didn't see a specific date in let's see what it said, because I did about 3 seconds worth of in a 1970 essay.
Oh, it was 1970. Okay.
He credited his reading of Hesse's 1930 book Journey to the East as a personal source of inspiration in coming up with the term servant leader in his 1970 essay, The Servant as Leader. Which is interesting that he puts the servant as leader instead of the leader as a servant. Would you all say that connotation changes if you flip-flop it?
I think that it was probably said that way because I think they take that there are two types of people. One who starts out with that servant heart kind of mentality and becomes a leader, and the other that is more of a, not dictator, but more of that strong, I'm a leader first, and then I build into maybe trying to add the servant portion of that. So I think that maybe that was his distinction.
So this is where I start to immediately get triggered. I'm trying to hold back because there's what in theory we want to do, and then there's the pragmatic of practice of what actually is happening.
Oh, I'm with you. Hold on. I haven't even gotten to say my comment about what servant leadership is.
Go ahead.
So,
sorry.
I went to the greenleaf.org website, and I'm like, well, what do they say? So it's literally greenleaf.org/what is servant leadership. Like that's the web page if you're interested in it. The very first statement, it says Servant leadership is a philosophy and set of practices that enriches the lives of individuals, builds better organizations, and ultimately creates a more just and caring world. Those are actual words that are put on a page. I would like to use that as my opening bet and ante for servant leadership is not a thing. Now, I am open to persuasion. So
barely.
I'm at this much. Let's say I'm able to be convinced. Who would like to make the first argument? John, are you so chomping at the bit you need to go?
Well, I'm going to be one of those, like, I believe in it, yet the winds blow differently. And this is what I mean by this. I'll just say my 2 cents and see where this goes. Like, I do believe in the concept that a servant leader, by the way, you asked if we flip him, if it changes. That actually messed with my mind a little, because when I actually thought of a leader who then serves, in most of the situations where people use the term servant leadership, I actually see people come to rise out in a position or title of status that calls themselves leader. And then all of a sudden they flip and become this person who serves. And a lot of the times people think it's disingenuous because they're just doing it because they want the people to then follow them and be a part of it. And, you know, your actions speak louder than words, where if you got to your spot because you led first and then you serve later, it's really hard to gain the trust of the people if you weren't serving before that. It's almost like you're giving it lip service almost in a way. And I'm not saying this is true for everything, but to my point of, I think servant leadership is a thing because I think it is genuine and becoming more and more in society acceptable to actually treat humans as individuals, that you have to actually pay attention to them and their lifestyle. I mean, what was it, 30, 40, even 50 years ago, where like, well, other way around, 40, 30, like if you go back even just 20 years ago, it was still very much mainstream of do your job, show up to work, the hierarchy culture, traditional. And now it's starting to change ever since around, especially 2005, 10, usually the internet.com age and the knowledge change, when people started to know their kind of worth and what was happening in their companies and more knowledge from the information age. A lot of people are now expecting and demanding to be, I don't know, held to a different standard, especially in the knowledge worker side. And they almost demand more respect from their leadership to be served in that sense. So I'll pause there for a sec because I could keep ranting, but this is where I'm half in, half out, because I think society and people want it and they see when leadership's doing it and they like it, but that doesn't mean they're doing a good job of it. And this is where I was going to pivot to, like, are you really being authentic though when you're being a servant leader? And that's the topic where I start to cringe and say, I don't know.
Yeah, how I would classify you before I throw it to Stephen is you wholeheartedly believe in the power of the concept. You believe it is possible, but you don't think it happens as often as we need. And that's how I would. That still tells me you think it's a thing. And I get the skepticism in people because, you know, we're people, right? I mean, I'm messed up and I'm probably above average as a human being, barely above average, but I'm probably a little above average.
And I'll say it short and sweet. The reason why it never happens in practice is because of HR. They motivate individuals.
I disagree for a completely different reason. But before we get to that, Stephen, why do you think servant leadership is a thing?
I think it's a thing. I would say my strongest argument is because it's how I tend to lead. So from my perspective, when I have a team, my goal is to make the team successful, work on individuals, help them to grow, and focus on the person. Out of that, I have had successful teams who then work together and produce products that make the business successful, which is the tail end of the fluffy stuff that they wrote on their description. But
a more just, just is what that was. That is when I hit that word.
Yeah,
when I hit that word, I was like, oh, okay.
I could tell. I would guess that the reason that they have that in there is because you are focusing on people, so therefore you're trying to improve and help the individual, so therefore it is a more just world. But you know,
sure. I mean, I walk the dog every morning, so I should have 6-pack abs, right? I mean, that's that.
You don't?
No,
Oh.
I don't. No, wait, just wait. John will be there someday when he stops being in his early 30s.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I moved from 6-pack to a keg.
well, yeah, that's man, I don't even know how to move off of that topic. So all right, I think I will briefly say the main reason why I think that it is not a thing is that I think that the few people that I have worked for and with that have displayed servant leadership have been statistical anomalies and by accident, and because they're just good people. I mean, I know you a little bit, Stephen. You don't seem like a terrible person, but like you could just be a good person and you've been in a leadership position and that maybe just naturally comes out of you. To say someone, well, we need to be servant leaders, I think those are statements that are said by people that A, don't have the ability to be one, B, will never be one, even if they could, and C, the system isn't set up for them to accomplish it anyway, sort of to John's point, right? So I think that it is something that is great to think about. And I just don't think that I don't think I've actually seen it happen. Now, it could come from the fact that I think what John was mentioning earlier was related to, he doesn't think that a leader all of a sudden goes, I'm a leader now, I'll become a servant. What I feel like John was saying without actually saying it was, someone that was raised decently or is a good person and that has a servant's heart, right? Which we can talk about that because I know all about having a servant's heart, like the kind of dad that I was raised with. Absolutely, like he had me mowing the lawn at the church because it needed to be done, and that's what we do for people, like someone needs something done, great, I'll come over with my tools and I can fix it. Like that's how then the house that I was raised. So I naturally do those things for people. I was naturally that scrum master that brought in donuts on random days and said, how can I help you be successful today, and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's because I learned what servant leadership is and was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. No, I just got raised to like serve people, and no matter what my role is in my position, I'm going to do it. I don't think that means servant leadership is a thing, but maybe I'm not seeing it the right way. I am curious though, Stephen, to come back to you on this. You mentioned servant leadership, you believing it because you believe you are one. I'm not going to argue with that, right? But what I'm curious of is, what are the activities that you feel like you do as a servant leader, and then maybe I can toss it over to John. John, you step in with like, what do you think are actions or activities that a servant leader does?
Yeah, and maybe this goes a little bit back to kind of the pre-talk that we had, which was, some of it is just good leadership. So is it good leadership that's now got a label called servant leadership? I don't know. For me, the important part is getting to know the team as individuals and, as the team, and being less focused on we have to crank this out period kind of meat widget approach, right? And so to me, that's the biggest piece. Looking at the team, getting to know individuals, getting to know their story, what helps drive them, and how can I help motivate them? How can I encourage them in their career? Is there something going on that I can help remove an obstacle or help promote something they're trying to do? Good example, I had a SQL database developer said one of her passions was she really thought she would like to get into PM work. Okay, well, what can we do to help that? Well, I had a project come in. I said, here, why don't you attack this as a PM? Let's talk through that. Let me help you see what that's like. And by the end of it, she was like, yeah, I like being a database developer. It's like, yeah, okay. But she didn't know. But that builds some trust and some respect there that, hey, you care for me enough to make this way for me to try this. Great.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's one example.
I remember when I was a QA lead, I would just look at my PM and I would go, man, like, if I could just ever get to the pinnacle of my career where I can be a project manager, that'd be so amazing. And I became a project manager. I'm like, why did I want this? Why did I even want this? It's crazy. John, what are the actions or activities of a servant leader?
So I'm going to talk myself in and out of the whole, is it something that's real or not, as I talk, because as I was thinking of all the things that make somebody a servant leader, I then trigger in my head immediately all the times where it's actually done harm. And I'll get into that in a sec. So like, I have to piggyback on Stephen a little, like it helps develop talent. Basically, a lot of good people that I know that are good people, I won't say servant leaders, but like good leaders say, I am a talent builder. I'm a person of people that wants them to be enabled and drive them, improve their pride of work, their focus, their ability to basically lead leaders and grow them. It's all about being that person that takes responsibility and ownership to encourage the greater good of and that's the good side of it. This is where it gets interesting that people don't like to talk about, because the philosophy is good. People don't like talking about what maybe is the bad that comes with it. So this is where I start to talk myself out of it, where it's like, is it a real thing or not? Because it's not statistically proven, but it has been talked about in philosophy that servant leadership is actually a slower methodology of speed to success, because you're bringing in the whole team and gaining trust and consensus a lot of the times. That's not the fastest way to optimize delivery. So if you want to do a servant leadership path, you'll have an overall happier team of success, but you will move slower. So that is an actual known experience and pragmatic way of getting things done, is you are going to move slower potentially. And maybe that's okay, but that's not always applicable in your scenarios. And that's just one of the many things. Leaders have different leadership styles. So if you're the only servant leader and everybody else is leading differently, that's not good. That's going to be awkward, right? And so there's just thing after thing that compounds the issue of, well, is it really just a thing or a fad people do in flare moments to gain trust and alignment? I mean, so I think there's good merits. The philosophy is sound. I can't align with the practice.
Yeah, I was laughing. Stephen probably knows why I'm laughing. I heard you say it's spoken about. Like, it's like you were saying, well, we talk about it in all of our presentations and our decks and our trainings, so it has to be a thing. Well, I mean, for all the talk I've heard about turning water into wine, I haven't seen that happen once. And I could sure use that right now because, I'm a little.
A lot of books printed that say it happens, though.
Yep.
But
I understand that.
But I think it is important to note that, like, even if you do have good servant leaders in an organization, the moment you have other leaders that have a more different, like a different, stronger style of how they communicate, or just the way of how they work or how they interact with people, that will cause confusion and harm with people trying to be enabled while they're yet still being led in a different way, whether that's controlled or task managed, whatever the style is, right? So
yeah, it's weird because the people on the other teams just keep wanting to gravitate over. It does cause conflict. I don't understand.
I will say
one thing I will say,
I've been that before. I know what it's like to want to be the person, like, I want to be on their team. Like, yeah. It's a cool feeling.
Well, and think about it, Stephen, and I'll let you, because like the intent here is that we're saying build trust, right? Get to know your team, enable them, empower them. Like, I'll do a lot of leaders in these high profile positions. Is that really what they vet and care about when they hire them in? I bet you the answer is not really. It's more of you can do that too. Great. It's like a nice to have, right? If you can be a good servant leader, it's not like a primary focus.
So it is an interesting thing, because I have being in the job market right now. I actually have seen several descriptions that actually call out servant leadership, and that one of the things I was going to get to is I think it's kind of like Agile in a way, in that you can do Agile in one department and it'll kind of be okay, but realistically it causes a lot of conflict in the org overall if the org is not moving that direction. And I think servant leadership is actually geared towards being the same thing. It's not one leader in a department that changes the whole thing, right? It
depends on the size of, right? It depends on the size of the org, right?
Correct. I agree. But the idea is that it's not a focus on a single. In fact, the idea behind it is it's not just a leadership. It's something that happens. It's a cultural move that happens where people are serving each other, not just the leader serving the people.
So you just
that's
brought up
the
a point
idea.
that, yeah, you just brought up a point that John mentioned earlier about the environment being one of the key components of servant leadership. And so I guess John mentioned, so I forgot what did you say was a limiting factor in the environment?
So one of the, I'll just repeat some of them and see if it rings. Like one of them was the speed to success is not as ideal because you have to bring the team along with you when you gain consensus through servant leadership, which your speed for success is typically not as good as just a good leader that has a clear path that tells a team what to do. It doesn't serve.
Yeah. So that lines up with one of the main reasons why I don't think servant leadership is a thing is because organizations don't financially motivate leaders to serve, right? So like, for example, every single director, VP, C-suite person that I've met with, right, their bonus is based on how many projects did you complete? How many people did you get? I mean, every now and then they may use the people trained, but we know that training doesn't really develop people.
Where does it come from, Murm? Where does it come from?
What do you mean?
HR sets the boundaries.
But HR doesn't set the bonus. HR doesn't set the bonus structure and what they're paid off of.
My point is if they truly cared about servant leadership and the people, then HR would have made it a statement to put in their goals and bonuses to make it.
I disagree. I think that's on the senior leadership, like either like the C-suite of our large organizations or the president of private companies.
I agree with
you.
They're
the ones that the ones that decide, I will pay you based on, no joke, one of the last clients when I was coaching is they got paid by the number of arts they got launched in a quarter and calendar year. Not successful, not good. Launch, right? Yeah. So I used to ask, I finally just flat out asked one of them, I said, it seems like you care more that we launch as opposed to how we launch. And they said, that's how I'm paid. Great, I'll get it done. Just I'll make my date, you just stay out of my way and we'll be successful because I actually care about how it's done. And yeah, if you don't motivate, I mean, like who like what organization bonuses their managers and their leaders by how many people did you get promoted, right? Or how much, or what was the retention of your org, right?
So funny comment on that. There are actual companies that take that so seriously that it seems disingenuous. So it goes the polar opposite direction. I know very big companies that are in high turnover like areas, like a good example is distribution centers. High turnover, very high. But even in the management space of distribution centers, and just because there's so many, they job hop just to get higher salaries. The whole point of me bringing this up is some of those companies intentionally tell those managers and directors and senior leaders, hey, if your succession plan actually happens that you have over the next year or two, that's part of your bonus and payout, and we'll incentivize you to do that. But like now it's just a numbers game where, I have to promote 2 people. Like they don't care about the actual growing of the person to actually do the role. They just care about fulfilling their KPIs and hitting their numbers to promote people.
Okay. So what's a better number to measure? Stephen, is there a better number? There a better metric to watch? I'm curious.
I don't know. It is a tough one. So I was going to throw out, and then I'll try to come up with an answer. But to stall for time, I will throw out that there actually are 2 words, right? So it's servant leadership. So leadership does still have to happen, right? And I think that's also a misnomer with the whole servant leadership thought when people hear it. Oh, I saw them just back to that. I'm just there to give them donuts and coffee, right? And make sure they're happy. No, there's actually leadership that is part of it. So
yeah, you have to decide what donuts. No, I'm just kidding.
And I think, yeah, exactly. And I think that it is very much the same as Agile, right? Trying to get into a company. if you don't have the upper leadership and the upper management buy-in, it's much harder to get in and be successful. So I think what you are starting to see now is more companies that are more people focused coming about now and being successful. So it'd be interesting to have this conversation 10 years from now, I would say. I guess the flip side is, hey, the essay was written in 70, so it's had a few years, but I guess I would say, I think it's more likely to happen now based on the way that we're evolving, where people are more of the centerpiece, like you were mentioning earlier, John. So I think that does make it a more viable option now. As far as it's slower to be successful, in some respects, it's kind of like investing, right? Some people play the short game and they're successful, and some people play the long game and they're successful over the longer term. So I think building, and maybe this is a thing too, maybe it works better in a smaller organization. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Well,
I was gonna put an answer to your question, Merm, is like, is there an alternative? And I came up with one that immediately hated what I thought, but I wanted to share it anyways. What if, like I said, Merm, half of your bonus is going to be determined by how the people that you led voted on how well you did, well you led. Like they get to basically dictate half your bonus. Then I got immediately wary, because if they didn't vote that person well, I'm sure the reverse would happen. So I'm not sure if that's a good model or not, but
yeah.
Here comes the sledgehammer. I didn't get my bonus.
Well, that's why 360 reviews are BS, because nobody ever tells the truth, and you know how everybody writes and their writing style, and you know who says what. And if someone says something bad about you, you're gonna know it, and you're gonna it's just I don't. I will say that I think I keep coming back to this environment. Is the company's environment able to allow leaders to do that, right? Like, do they? John mentioned, or no, Stephen, you mentioned the whole feature factory thing. Like basically the leader that just cracks that does not use the carrot, that uses the stick, right? And for the record, you can still be a servant leader and use a stick. I think it's possible to, but that's neither here nor there. That is the result of the organization that they work for. Are they enabled as a leader to say, hey, I asked you all to do 100 features and you only did 75. That's fine. Let's figure out what we didn't do wrong, or what we did wrong, or how we overestimated, and see if we can fix it next time. And which is not a lot of the organizations that I work with, of those kind of people in power. That doesn't mean that all of them are like that, right? And also, as much as I'd like to think that I would be absolutely one of these leaders, because of how I said I was raised earlier, I'm still gonna have a pissy day, and I'm gonna be stressed out about some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get a nasty gram from my ex-wife about something, and unfortunately, the person that's nearest to me when I get it is gonna pay for it.
So I would like to rewind the tape if I could, because
Okay.
What I heard you say was, I still think you can be a servant leader.
No, I said I think you can do that as a servant leader. I just don't think, because I don't think it's a thing. I just don't think it's possible. I think you can. I said it in the very beginning. I said you can do it. This is absolutely something that a good person would want to do. Do I put others in front of me? Am I willing to be the one that takes notes? Am I willing to let other people facilitate the meeting? Hey, what do you think about that? How do I make room for people that are not white males to give their opinion? How do I help you get promoted? How do I actually help you be successful in your role? Those are something that a servant leader should do. Most of the time, I don't know. Now, all right. Now I just thought, sorry, Stephen, you were about to say something. Then I'm about to contradict myself.
I don't know if I want to interrupt that. I was going to say, to your point earlier on, so I do think some of it can be strongly influenced by the way you were raised. my parents were very much the same way. So I think that is a big part of why I am that way. And I'm in leadership. So I bring that to leadership. You want to label it servant leader. Now we have a movement. Yay. But, it's kind of okay. I have also worked for people who were completely I'm the boss, do what I say. By the way, go fire 2 people. If you don't, I'm going to pick 2 names. I don't care who they are. Great, thanks. So,
yeah, I will say.
Go ahead and contradict yourself now.
No, so admittedly, I've never had to fire anybody. I've never hired or fired anybody. I've had people report to me, but I've never hired or fired anybody. So I don't know anything about it. So
it sucks.
I'm sure
and
it
sucks
does.
more if you're coming at it from a servant leadership standpoint, where you have built that relationship and you're trying to help the people. Yeah,
I had to coach somebody on that today. He had to give some bad news, and he's basically about to let him go and fire him. And it's the first time he's ever fired somebody, and he's petrified. Like, he just feels terrible. He said he couldn't sleep last night. He's been thinking about it, and all I said was, if you know you're doing the right thing, why do you think it's the right thing? And he said, well, really, I think it's because this person is probably holding back the rest of the team. And I said, that's how you really need to view it then. So you really are being a servant leader to the true people you need to take care of. But it's still not as easy as that. I was just coaching him to make sure he could emotionally get through it.
It's easier to coach that than it is to actually
coach. It is not.
Also, John, how in the hell do you know like what it feels like? You don't feel emotions like a normal human does. Like you're like, I don't know how you're supposed to empathize with what he's going through.
You're an alien. Unfortunately done a lot of hiring and let go and performance in my days. Yes.
You have?
Yeah, I've done 6 years of it. Yep.
It sucks.
Yep.
Ugh.
And it only gets harder the more influence you have.
Yeah.
I always say
sometimes are harder than others. I will say that. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I will say that I would rather have like inanimate objects or inhuman things like processes and no, meaning like I don't I have been a leader. I have people report to me. I've never had the misfortune of that. So so here's my potential contradiction is that I think that one environment, when I was thinking earlier, Stephen, about the environment piece, I thought about, okay, well, no matter what level you are in the company, what's work that always requires you to put the needs of someone else above yours? And then I thought consulting. Because when you have a client, it doesn't matter how I'm as high of a level of a billing consultant as I know there is right now. The next promotion for me is I get out of the billable world and I start telling all the billable people what to do, kind of a thing. Like I'm as up there as I can be, and there is always someone to tell me what to do, and I am humbled almost weekly in this work.
How this is where I come back to one of the statements I mentioned a while back. How authentic is it in this consulting space, though? And that's where I challenge, are you doing it because you know it's part of the game, or are you actually being genuinely assertive?
Yeah, well, I will start with saying I don't know that I'm going to be the best judge of that, because I would say that people describe me as being a very authentic person. Like what you see is what you get with me. And so I don't really worry about me being authentic because it just naturally oozes out of me. So I don't know, Stephen, for you, like in your consulting stuff, like how authentic, like of the pie chart, how authentic do you think it is?
I mean, I think for me, it's authentic. It is how I am. So I guess you always
have an opportunity to serve someone else because they're literally paying you to serve them. I don't think that makes, because I'm accepting a paycheck, I don't think that makes it inauthentic. Now, I will say this. There are plenty of consultants, and Stephen's you both have probably met your fair share of ones that their job is to sell, staff, and upsell, right? Sell and staff, sell and staff, sell and staff, right? They're earning money and they're burning it, right? Like those are the people that probably most people think of when they think of inauthentic consultants, just because to them it's a numbers game, right? Yes, do they want to serve your needs? Yes. And for the record, like companies like Accenture, like the C-suite is probably sometimes billable if need be, right? Like everybody in the company is billable. So if you're billing hours, you kind of sort of at least got to care a little bit. And the rest of the time you glad hand and do the fake laugh, right? Like all of that. Sure, I could see how somebody would say it. I just don't understand how you show up. Most of the time, the people I talk to are peers, right? Sometimes they're above me. And those people I treat with a different level of respect. Like if you're signing my sals, you get treated with a level of deference and respect. And I may not be 100% authentic with you because I don't want you to rip the paper up at any given point in time. But those aren't the people that I ever work with. I usually work with. I'm not working with them. I'm working with the people that report to them, or the people that report to the people that report to them, kind of a thing, right? So those people I'm peers with, those, I can always be fun, Chris, then, and and be like, look, I'm here to make you successful. If you're not successful, I don't have another contract coming. Yeah, I'm not successful, and they're never going to hire me to do anything again, right? So does that make you more of a servant? I don't know. I mean, do you think being a consultant, Stephen, could, and maybe not you and me, but just, someone else that do you think it could make you more of a servant as a result?
I guess it depends on what type of consulting you're doing, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're consulting at the C-suite level with a one-off person, I mean, are you really leading that person or not? I think of servant leadership more on, I have a team and I'm servant leading that team. Less so.
But you're going to have your own team on the consulting side, right? Like, if you're the engagement lead, you're probably either whether you're an individual contributor
True.
or part of a team. Most of the time I was on a team and I was still like, I think that the client, like if you're pairing with them, right, or partnering, right, whether it's a coaching engagement, you're partnering with scrum masters, you're a tech coach and you're doing pairing.
Yeah.
Well, some of them they are scum, but that's a different story. So I mean,
from that perspective, I think my approach to the individual is still the same.
So I'll give you a different.
That's where you're headed.
I still interact a lot with our customers and clients directly because I work a lot in consumer facing solutions and implementations where I have to actually get on calls and even go to the sites. So I'm in a way sort of consulting with them because I have to work a solution and customize something and make it work in their networking, their IT. And so I'm listening to them, but now Murm was kind of messing with my head though, where he said, well, what happens if you flip it? Well, in that sense, I'm not really being a servant leader. I'm actually being a leader because I'm going in there confident, trying to drive an outcome with the customer, but I'm serving them. But I'm kind of giving intent that like, hey, I'm here to help you and direct you, but I'm going to serve you based off my intent as a leader. And I do think that's different than being like, I'm here to serve and I'm going to lead wherever it's necessary. If I did that with my customers, they would just think I'm useless because they're actually like, no, you're supposed to tell us what to do, like direct us and lead us. So I would say there is a nuanced difference, I guess.
Yeah, Stephen said that earlier when he said leadership still has to happen, right? It's like there are some decisions that can't be decentralized. Like you just have to make a call, and I hate it when I have to be the person that's like, listen, I get everybody's point, but someone has to make a call, and this is what I'm going to do.
How much do you think there's persuasion in servant leadership?
I don't know that the two words are necessarily related but I'm listening. Tell me more.
it seems like in order to be a good servant leader, you kind of have to make sure people understand the intent of being a good person. So and once again, this goes back to the whole discussion we had on their upbringing, culture, where they go, you don't know. So if you're trying to tailor people that you have really not in the entire scope and background of what they've experienced, what they've gone through, who they are, their identity, you sort of have to give this a notion that this is the good way to do things and be persuasive about what that is, what good is, right? You can't just say this is good. You almost have to persuade them in incremental chunks of what good leadership is. And you have to do that by sort of leading by example, but I don't know if persuasive is the right word, because that's usually a negative context when people hear that, because they think like manipulated, but that's not really what I mean. Persuasion can be good too, so.
I don't know that I would use the word persuasion, because that seems more like being convincing. Being convincing, so that.
But do we agree there's a wrong and a right?
I think if it seems like you're trying to seem like a good person, then you're probably not being a good person, and you're just trying to cover it up. But I think that I'm maybe making it too simple.
Yeah, maybe with where you're heading. I mean, there are times where I've had to have conversations with people that, hey, this is what I'm trying to build for this team. So next time when we're having this kind of interaction, this would be a good approach because it would allow X, right? So if that's what you mean by persuading, to me, that's more like educating than it is persuading.
Well, and I also don't think that, I don't think you can, like, I think a servant leader would say, give tough feedback of, hey, so I got a call from the client and this happened and I'm not here to beat you up about it. I just want to talk to you about how we can like clean this up because I know it didn't come out the way that you intended it to, right? Rather than going, the client's pissed at you, you better fix this now or I'm gonna have to replace you on the team, right? Like that's a leader serving themselves by getting the client off their back. Right. Like my response is always like, if a coach's heart is always like, I can work with anybody, please, they're great. Like, don't get rid of them because on my account, like I'm here to, like, I view every team member that as well. Like some team members absolutely would not pick. And there's some team members that I absolutely would, but the ones I wouldn't, like, I don't ever say like, I'm going to hose you on this account so you're not successful, right? Like, hey, we all got a job to do. Like, we can get along while we do it. Like, let's just figure out how to be successful, kind of a thing. And some of my biggest conflicts in that have also actually led to some really good stuff, some co-servant leadership, right? Because I mean, if we really think about it, like, yeah, maybe one of us is higher than the other on the food chain, but if we're all servant, if we have a servant's attitude, right, regardless of that level, we're gonna end up serving each other, right? If a leader is willing to pour down into their people, right, then they're gonna rise up and go, hey, like, we rocked it this sprint. We did whatever.
And justice will be served. See?
I don't disagree as long as that doesn't come with I guess the only fear, I agree with everything you just said, Murm. The only thing that crept into my head that gave me a little pause was the creep of CEOism, as some people would call it, where the leaders expect the same urgency and kind of expectations from the team as themselves. Like, you should be putting the extra mile. You should be working on the weekends. You should be just like I am. I'm the VP. Why doesn't people have the same mindset I do? I don't want that also, because if you say they're higher on the food chain, well, they're probably there for a reason, because they're held more accountable and compensated for that to make those decisions. So I agree with the whole, we're in it together, we're a team. But at the end of the day, I think HR, logistics, compensation, and expectations would say otherwise. But I hear what you're saying.
I love how the more that we've gone on, it's like John started here and he's now on this side, and I started on this side.
I know.
And
I told you I'm 50-50.
I'm kind of sort of here.
Yeah.
I don't think my stance has changed. It's just I see it. When I think my days at Solutions IQ, like the good old days, like was an organization of people that really took care of everybody, regardless. Like there was no, yes, there are people that were leads and such, but like nobody really had that different of a title, and it really didn't matter. And we didn't care what level we are. Everybody got the same bonus, and and
it's impactful.
we won't get into the difference.
There's the little things even at our company when like they announced there's Chick-fil-A sandwiches this morning out there. It doesn't matter whether you're a team member or everybody wants a sandwich, and they chat with each other. Like it's just little things like that just make everyone puts on their pants on the same way, guys. Well, maybe not. Maybe some everyone puts on one leg at a time. But so the whole point though is like, we're all the same at the end of the day, but I think it is controversial to kind of expect the team to be just held to a standard that, we're all going to help each other. Okay, I get what you're saying in the theory of it and the philosophy of it, but in practical sense, really?
I think that this is a call out that if you put, like, any listener out there, if you put your pants on with both legs at the same time, please reach out to John Schneider. Right, I'm not giving you his email address, but John, join our
just
Discord.
Hop on, yeah, absolutely.
Just join Discord. His name is @Schneider, and light him on fire. Like light him up. It makes me I want this to happen. I'm gonna try doing it tomorrow, just cause, Johnny boy.
So I was gonna say an interesting piece, right? In Agile, the team pulls in as a team what's the sprint's supposed to be, right? And supposedly as a team they work together to get that done. They don't all go off and do their own little piece that they've claimed, right? So from that perspective, trying to build it in to a team and building that same servant leadership where everybody is helping everybody actually does fit in nicely to Agile.
Yeah, and as we discussed, I think that if the organization is the right size and the right mentality and is created by people with hearts, which there are plenty of companies that are out there, someone with a servant's mentality and a servant's heart can show up and get to leadership. And if they are, they're probably going to get to leadership faster than they realize. And they're going to, in that scenario, it can happen. I don't think in the United States there are many organizations that are like that, and I don't know how. I don't know if it's possible. I'm sure that other parts of the world there might be, but I don't know.
I'll throw out two more things real quick. Real quick. I will say, doing the servant leadership piece with people over you that are not that way is a challenge and an art to actually survive doing that. So it is definitely not for the faint of heart to try to jump in and say, this sounds great, let me do this, right? The other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to do one quote, which was, my hope is to engage with others in a manner that respects where they are and care for them to the best of my ability. Written,
I think that's a statement
by you.
Wait, when did I write this?
2019, I think it was.
Oh,
but
God.
yeah, that to me that kind of sums up what we're talking about.
I really
January 6th, 2019.
Sure. That sounds great. How fascinating that my own words online would come back to haunt me in a conversation.
Shocker.
Wow, man, he saved that. Like, John, he had that thing chambered for an hour. And
I got too wrapped up in the conversation, and then I looked over and I was like, dang, I was going to do that quote.
Gosh, man. So I think at the end of the day, I think where we all are is that the concept is something we can get behind. Our success of seeing it, not seeing it, believing that it's even possible in certain organizations or countries or societies. We're probably all going to hell in a handbasket anyways, the way if you read the news these days. So it probably isn't going to matter in about 20 years. So just smoke them while you got them, and let's stop being nice to each other, because it's all gonna end. I don't know that I even buy that, but so I was just gonna end the podcast right then and just go,
Stop.
this has been Chris Murman for Stephen Kellogg and John Schneider. So, how about we just be nicer to each other? Just, I think my only encouragement is, tomorrow when you're at work, if you're listening to it on a Sunday, the next day, right? Like, tomorrow, find someone at work and see how you can help them. Someone that you've never thought about helping. Ask them about their aspirations. What do they want to do? And if there's something you can do, if there's something you can introduce, maybe a good word that you can put in. If you've got like a feedback system, find that person that's been needing to pick me up, or nobody says anything good about ever, and find something good to say about them. Like, that's stuff that decent people do. And I think that at the end of the day, servant leadership just says, be the best person you can. Don't think about yourself all the time. It's okay to think about yourself some of the time. John probably thinks about himself way more than he should, but just think of somebody else. You know what I mean?
And I'll close out by piggybacking to say, we talked about how it's habits, right? And it's also just how you grow up, what your experiences are. So it's never too late to also just, look inward, like how do you serve in your community or among your family? And, it's habits and behaviors, right? So even when you come home and you have your spouse or your kids or anything like that, it'll be amazing when you actually put some other things first and just have that habitually grained, and that translates into some of the work behaviors you may also express. So you can always practice. It's not easy. We all agree it's not easy. It is a big change.
Yeah, trying counts, and you should at least want to try. I think we landed this sucker well. Thanks everybody for listening. This was a fun chat. It was a fun debate. I don't know that we really debated a whole lot, but hopefully we gave you all something to think about. So I am Chris Murman. He is Stephen Kellogg, and that young man is John Schneider. And I wish I had a name for us, but we don't. But on behalf of Agile Uprising, thanks for listening. Well, three dork faces or whatever, we're definitely jackasses is what we are. This is me signing off. Bye.